Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Karen parks her car in the middle of the road and misery ensues. A story about an entitled mother I encountered the other day. Further down the block from where I live is an elementary school. Due to some poor planning older part of town, the entrance to the school is on a one-way, one-lane street. During school drop-off and pick-up hours, I know to avoid the area. But during the day, the area is fairly quiet, and it's actually the quietest way for me to get home. Such is what happened the other day. I ran some errands in the morning and then headed home to get to work. As I got to the school, the car in front of me slowed down and then stopped. I thought the driver was perhaps picking someone up or dropping off someone who was late. But what happened instead is that the driver shut the engine, hit the hazards, and exited the car and began heading into school. I immediately honked to grab her attention, but as all Karens are, possessed of an internal mechanism that blocks out all irritating noises beyond the screech of other Karens calling for support from the coven. I was summarily ignored. Cars began piling up behind me, and Karen was nowhere to be found. All that's left for me to do is stew in my own increasingly boiling pot of anger and outrage. I'll be honest, I considered just leaning on the horn until she came back, but I knew it would do no good and I'd just bother the kid studying. About 15 minutes later, Karen came back, strolling along without a care in the world. When we saw her, she was greeted with a cacophony of car horns, yelling and cursing, but her deflector shields were up and she heard not a thing of the abuse we hurled her way. She got in a car and drove off, and I got home a few minutes later. To add insult to injury, there were parking spots about 50 feet up the road, but she didn't even bother trying to go once around the block to look for spots. That's it. That's all there is to the story. Just an entitled person who couldn't possibly comprehend that a public road is not her personal parking spot. However, for the sake of the story and to make you all feel better, all of us who were stuck behind her banded together, called the cops and confronted her. She was arrested for assaulting a police officer and filing false claims after she took a swing at the cops because they didn't believe her when she told the cops she was sexually harassed by us in front of the school guard, while threatening to shoot her, her kids, and shoot up the school. What a crazy woman. Next story. Woman damages my mom's car and then blames her. Her corrupt cop boyfriend covers it up and ruins both their reputations. For some background, I live in a predominantly white suburban town in New Jersey and my family is Asian. Although the town is alright for the most part, it is not really a secret that some of the town people are pretty racist. One of our neighbors, let's call him Anthony, is a retired police captain from another town. But he is friends with my town's police chief. My mother is a first-generation immigrant, and although she's fluent in English, she still has a pretty thick Asian accent. A couple of years ago, my mom went to visit one of her friends on the other side of town. My mom had parallel parked directly in front of her friend's house, which is at the bottom of a small hill. As she was leaving, a woman driving a Jeep Wrangler with her children was driving down the small hill. But she was still a decent distance back, so my mom pulled out of her spot. The road they were on was really wide, with enough space to fit like 5 cars next to one another, and about 40 feet ahead was a stop sign. My mom at this point was already in the middle of the road, fully out of the parking spot and had gotten about 10 feet when the woman driving the Jeep suddenly came up from behind my mom's car and cut directly in front of her, crossing a double yellow line to do so. Because of the angle she cut off my mom at, the Jeep's rear wheel ended up ripping off my mom's front bumper. My mom naturally immediately stopped. and the woman got out of her car after straightening it out on the road. As soon as she stepped out of her car, this woman, we'll call her Karen, immediately started cursing my mom out at the top of her lungs. Karen told my mom to call the police, but my mom told her that her phone had died. My mom's friend and her son, as well as a neighbor, came out of the house after hearing the commotion to see what had happened. The neighbor, an elderly man, asked what happened and Karen yelled, "Are you freaking blind? A freaking accident happened. Go call the police or something. I need to call my boyfriend." The son had taken a law class in college, so he offered to take a bunch of pictures of the scene of the incident and send them to my mom later. This becomes super important later. The neighbor calls the police, but Karen's boyfriend arrives at the scene first. When the cop, let's call him Kenny, finally arrives, he asks my mom what happened. And just as my mom had just started telling her side of the story, the cop says, "Wait just a minute," and walks over to the boyfriend. As it turns out, the boyfriend, we will call him Sam, was a cop in the town who was pretty popular with the kids in the middle school since he would occasionally visit to talk about things like dare and other things in assemblies. Sam was off duty at the time, so he was able to come over when Karen called him. As soon as Kenny saw his butt Sam, he immediately went to go talk to him, rather than with my mom or with Karen. They discussed it for a little while, and afterward sent everyone on their way. My mom tried to talk to Kenny before he left, but Kenny just brushed it off and said he got the details he needed and that my mom would be able to get the police report in about a week or two. When my mom received the police report, she saw that it said that she pulled out without using her blinkers suddenly and hit Karen's car. On top of that, Karen was expecting for my mom's insurance to pay for the damage done to her rear wheel. My mom went to my neighbor Anthony to ask what she should do about the report since it was clearly wrong. Anthony was furious and told her that she should go to the police station and ask to see the chief, and if they ask why she needs to see him, she should tell them that it's because she wants to file an internal complaint. That day, my mom takes the photograph sent to her by the son and goes to the police station and asks the person working the front desk to see the chief. The cop says that she could not just walk in and ask for the chief. So my mom responds, "Okay, so where should I go to file an internal complaint?" And the cop immediately straightens up and says, "Right here, come with me." And he leads her into the back. The deputy chief steps into the room and starts recording the conversation. Since the chief was out, my mom presented all the evidence to him instead. After presenting the evidence to show that it was in fact Karen that hit her instead of the other way around, my mom also says that she would like to file a corruption complaint against both Kenny and Sam. Kenny clearly did not do his job properly since he did not properly ask the actual people involved in the accident and did not even know the fact that there were 2 passengers in Karen's car in the report. Even Karen later admitted to an investigator that Kenny never once spoke to her. My mom even threw in the racist card for good measure, saying maybe Kenny wouldn't listen to her and brushed her off because of her thick Asian accent. Sam meanwhile had interfered with the investigation despite not being at the scene of the crime during the time of the accident. The deputy chief says he will start an internal investigation and will see if anything needs to be done. Meanwhile, my mom also filed a claim to her insurance and presented the evidence to them too. And her insurance decided since the accident in their eyes was clearly not her fault, they weren't going to pay Karen a penny, and that they would contact Karen's insurance to pay my mom instead. A lot of internal bureaucratic investigational nonsense happens, including interviews with Karen, my mom's friend, and the friend's neighbor. About a month passed, and an officer came to our house to tell my mom that Kenny had been punished, but there was not enough evidence to punish Sam, and he just wanted to know if there were any other concerns she had. Since Karen seemingly had not done anything to further warrant any action, and the damage to the car was paid for, my mom said that there was nothing else. This is the fun part though. 3 days after the officer came to our house, A letter came in the mail for a court hearing. Turns out, Karen decided to file 3 tickets about my mom just one day before the statute of limitations. Apparently, in New Jersey, citizens are allowed to file complaints about other citizens breaking the law, a thing that our family had never heard of before until this happened. Because of how late she filed these complaints, by the time we received them in the mail, we could not even counter-complain, and the only options were to pay the fine or go to court. We assumed that Karen learned about being able to file a complaint from Sam, and that the only reason she was willing to go this far is because she heard my mom had a super thick Asian accent and assumed that my mom wouldn't know what to do about the tickets and would just pay up. What she didn't count on was the fact that my mom is actually really aggressive with an absolutely massive network of people that she knows. Within a day, my mom hired a lawyer to fight the case, and they immediately asked to change the court from the small court in our town to one of the large courts a couple of towns away. The logic was that if she fought the case in our town, my mom would be at a disadvantage since her case was essentially going against our town's beloved police force, but by putting it in a different town, the playing field would be even. Additionally, while my mom worked from home in her own business, Karen had a full-time job in town. So, going to court in a different town would be a huge pain for her. The lawyer had prepared a huge amount of evidence against Karen, so there was no way she was actually going to win the case no matter what. Come the court date and Karen never showed up, so the case was thrown out. That was a pretty nice win. But what came after was even better. Since my mother and sister have a lot of friends in town, the story of Karen and Sam doing this shady nonsense got out really fast. Soon, half the town had heard about it, and suddenly Karen and Sam went from 2 favorites in the town because of Sam's reputation to 2 of the most underhanded and nasty people. Sam stopped getting invited to school assemblies and Karen was ostracized in her kid's school's PTA. Anthony also ended up talking to the police chief in private. We found out that although Sam was not officially punished, he was severely reprimanded by the chief. Next story. Customer demands wrong ticket and pays for it. This happened about 8 years ago when I worked at a gas station while in school. This happened during some time when the power pole had a fairly high jackpot. Nothing crazy but higher than normal. Some information on the lottery for those unaware. You can fill out a sheet with your numbers and have multiple sets of numbers. You pay $2 to $3 for each set on a ticket. This runs through a machine and a receipt is printed. At that point, the store is charged for the entry, so the customer needs to pay for it. You can choose to have the same numbers run for more drawings after. You just check a box for how many drawings you want. If you run a ticket through the machine twice, it just makes a duplicate for the same drawing. So I guess if you win twice as much, excluding the jackpot, but not really something anyone would do. This woman, not really a Karen but let's call her that, came in with a thick wad of cash and a pre-filled ticket. I greet her and she just drops the ticket on the counter without replying. I need this put through the machine 20 times. I look down at the ticket. 5 sets of numbers, all with power play. One drawing of this costs $15, so if she wants it to draw for the next 20 drawings, it would cost around $300. But what she said is she wanted the same ticket 20 times, all for the next drawing. Same price, but not what people normally want. So I ask her, okay, did you mean you wanted this to run for the next 20 drawings? No. I said I want you to put this in the machine 20 times, so I have 20 individual tickets. So you want this all to draw at the same time? Yes, that's what I said. Okay, I just want to be sure that's what you want. So these will be all duplicate tickets, all drawing on Friday. So I take the ticket and run it through. And out pops the confirmation ticket and receipt. I look up and she just says, "Yep, keep putting it through." I do this a few more times and just ask, "Okay, again, you're sure this is what you want? This will all draw on Friday only." And Karen just sighed and confirmed yes. I kept going, and sometime after the 12th or the 13th one, she said, "So do I just keep these for all the drawings after Friday?" Me stopping feeding the ticket into the machine? No, these will all draw on Friday only, and be done, just like you requested. Again, do you mean you want them to run on every drawing afterwards? Karen now gets confused and answers, "Yes." Okay, that's why I was asking so many times. These will not do that. They will draw once and be done. Karen then starts saying, well, that's not what she meant and that she doesn't want the ones I already printed off and says, who would want that? So I tell her, exactly why I asked you so many times. I'm sorry, but you need to buy these as there is no way we will be able to sell them. No, I won't. I want the ones I asked for. She was starting to get upset, and at this point, our awesome assistant manager, who was nearby, stepped in. Excuse me, ma'am, but I heard our employee ask you several times before he started, and he even explained the difference to you. We cannot sell the tickets printed out, which he only did after you repeatedly stated that's how you wanted them done. Karen started to look like she was going to bolt out of the door at this point. So the assistant manager added, and if you don't, we will have to treat it as theft and call the cops. Karen finally relented and bought the tickets. She then used the remainder of her money to buy the tickets how she intended to, just not as many draws. She left without another word. She honestly wasn't that bad, but she did have some attitude like she knew everything. Still, I hope at least one of her numbers won on that first drawings, so she get back most of what she spent. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.